Welcome everybody. It is what is it? Yeah, it's Thursday. It's Thursday. I forgot to check. It's Thursday night, and this is Attack on the Politicos. It is the NGSC Sports weekly political show. I am your host, Ralph Garcia, joined this evening by the coach. Uh, just for any questions, Ruben's no longer with the show. He's got some things he's dealing with, so we wish him the best, and love to my cousin always. Lori has to screw around on me half the time, and we love you, Lori. She'll be back next week. A couple of people on right now here. Thank you for joining us. This is Attack on the Politicals. Listen, we got a nice show coming up. You guys got questions, you got thoughts, you got a comeback, you want to talk shit, you don't like what we're saying. That's the beauty about this show. We want you to speak up. Of course, I am joined by my co-host, the coach, Glenn Dowdy. Coach, what's going on?
Not much. How you doing tonight?
You know what, Coach? Good to be here. Plenty to talk about. It's the end of the year, and the good thing about our show is there's always something to talk about, Coach. There's always something to talk about. But first,
there is such a thing as security that's needed anyway. So I think there's a way we can work through this.
Trade can be wonderful if you have smart people, but we have people that are stupid.
This is your victory. I know you didn't do this just to win an election. I know you didn't do it for me. You did it because you understand the enormity of the task that lies ahead.
yes, and we are here, of course, first and foremost, to remember the website. It is ngscsports.com, where you catch all of your current content. It's football bowl season, so we're busy at NGSC Sports. But first, John Doucette gives us the America East basketball news and notes. League play awaits. America East is less than 1 week away from conference play. They've had a strong non-conference season so far. So let's see what America East basketball will do in conference play. John Doucette will keep us up to date with that. Mike Drakulich gives us against all odds the NFL and NCAA picks. That's what him and his dad have been doing for years. They pick the games against each other. We'll see how that goes. And then we have bowl coverage. Bradley Walker was in Boca Raton, Florida, covering the Boca Raton Bowl. Huge win for South Florida, a team that won one game last year, 3 games the last 2 years, win 7 games this year, and they win in blowout fashion, 45-0. Huge win over Syracuse, the largest shutout win in NCAA bowl history. Luca Tedesco just went to the Wasabi Fenway Bowl this morning as the Boston College Eagles pull off the huge upset. I believe it was 23-17, I think it was. I do want to make sure that I got that right, but it was a big win over SMU, 23-14, excuse me. It's a big win over Southern Methodist. SMU, of course, had their best season since the 1987 death penalty season. But Boston College and Thomas Castellano, their quarterback, 156 yards rushing, leads the BC Eagles to the huge bowl win. Congratulations to the Eagles, of course, one of the schools that we cover. Let's see. Alton Barry was at NRG last night in Houston, and he was covering the Texas Bowl, the Tax Act Texas Bowl between the Cowboys of Oklahoma State and the Aggies of Texas A&M. Oklahoma State comes up with the big win there, but not before the Aggies made a big comeback on them. Let's see what else. What else do we have? Bowl games. Just got the approval today for myself and my wife. We will be headed to Mobile, Alabama to cover the 2024 Senior Bowl in Mobile. taking my wife to her very first press box, Coach.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah, I'm going to get her up in the press box, let her take that camera and shoot a whole bunch of pictures. All that and more, of course, on NGSCSports.com, where we never stop. Washington, politics. Donald Trump. Plenty to talk about. Plenty to talk about. So, Coach, you shared a lot of good links with us. We're gonna touch on all of those. One of the things that's been real big, of course, we have the cases, all these cases, the 91 felony counts against Donald Trump. And look, you're not charged with 91 felonies for the hell of it. So that, you know, a prosecutor just doesn't decide one day, you know, I don't like you, so I'm going to, you know, a bunch of us are just going to go ahead and just charge you with 91 felonies. There's a reason for 91 felonies. Are they all justified? Are they all true? Well, look, that's why we have the legal system, the court system, and we'll find out. Nonetheless, there are 91 penalties, 91 felonies. And, Coach, the government's success rate, the Fed's success rate, conviction rate, is somewhere around 96%, I heard, in that neighborhood. So, I don't know. I'm going to say this as politely as I can. It would appear that Donald Trump is fucked. But let's see, Coach. Listen, I'm going to turn it to you with this. Trump has to figure out what he's going to do to get out of this. Because his only ticket, surefire ticket to get out of these federal cases, of course, is to win the election in next November. But next November is, well, just about a year away. In the meantime, Coach, he says, I get absolute immunity. Coach.
Okay, to start with, the 91 felonies, let's not forget, it wasn't just the prosecutor that decided to one day wake up and charge Donald Trump with 91 felonies. It was the grand juries, and they were in 4 different cases. So it's kind of like been pretty unanimous from these grand juries about the fact that he has committed felonies because they've indicted him. You know, the prosecutor picks up on the indictment after the grand jury has finished and sent down, you know, an indictment for them to work with. The case of absolute immunity, you know, there's nowhere in the Constitution where the president is granted immunity from anything. There's no federal law that provides immunity for the president. There's more or less this unwritten agreement that the Justice Department has come up with a couple of their memos that are now pretty famous memos that basically say that they're not going to criminally prosecute a president during the time that he's in office, right? So that's like the first part of it is like he can't be charged with the crime while he's in office. Now, it doesn't preclude him from being charged for crimes. It's just that he's protected during that time, no different than the way he's protected from civil lawsuits while he's in office. If you put it into perspective, if Donald Trump had to handle a civil lawsuit while he was in office, you know, every friggin' American that's against Donald Trump would file a civil lawsuit and he'd be inundated with millions of lawsuits that he'd have to try to manage. So in the civil sense, you know, it doesn't make sense, you know, to leave him exposed, any president, you know, for frivolous lawsuits. So he does have absolute immunity from that, from civil lawsuits but not criminal. And it hasn't been tested. The whole policy that the Department of Justice works under, it hasn't been tested where, you know, they've had a case against the president and we're putting it together during the presidency. The investigations are one thing, like with Nixon. You know, Nixon was investigated. There was crimes and misdemeanors, but it was heading towards the impeachment process, you know, and then the possible removal and stuff. And that's kind of how I think Trump wants the courts to look at this idea of immunity, is that because he's already been impeached and not removed, he's already had his day in court. And that's what he's trying to sell, is that he's had his day in court already. And, they've already said he did nothing wrong, according to him. But the absolute immunity going in now is going to be going to the Supreme Court. And this is where it gets really sticky for the Supreme Court, because you have a sitting president that is a Democrat, and you're being asked by a previous president to agree that presidents have absolute immunity from prosecution. And though it's written in other decisions by the Supreme Court that they do not, one of them is against Clinton. There was a case versus Clinton, and he was not granted immunity for some of the stuff that he did that before he got into office. So you have this argument that if they go along with Trump and say that the president has an absolute immunity, they are bestowing absolute immunity onto President Biden, which is the one thing they really can't afford to do, because their whole campaign for the last number of years has been this criminal association with his son and his brother, and how they're, the crime family. Well, he's crime family and he's immune from prosecution because he has absolute immunity. Those meetings that they're doing, those hearings that they're doing, are absolutely fucking pointless. Now, when it comes to Trump getting into office, and that only negates the federal part of it. He can get control over the federal cases for the insurrection and the voter fraud and stuff like that, but it doesn't get him out of the state ones, and we know that already. Georgia, for example, they're pressing forward. They're trying to get a court date that's somewhere around March, I think, to really get the case going in Georgia. This is a case that he can't get around, and he can't avoid it. Even if he's elected president, he can't avoid it, because by the time the election comes, he'll already have been through the courts somehow on that, whether it's delayed and they pick it up in July, whatever. But they can probably handle that case in under 6 weeks' time and presenting it to a jury, both sides. So he's kind of screwed with that case. The other case in New York, the fraud case, that's a financial case. He's just going to have to pay money. They're working it out, what he's going to end up paying to New York for all his fraud and stuff. But the absolute immunity, again, it's been addressed a couple of times by the Supreme Court, and it'll be very interesting to see this Supreme Court try to bestow absolute immunity on a president. It would be asinine.
So, Coach, it's safe to say that, first and foremost, obviously, yes, it's going to go to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court eventually is going to have to rule on here. But let's look at a worst case scenario. So the Supreme Court rules that he has, as he calls it, absolute immunity. Well, then doesn't that give Joe Biden carte blanche to do whatever the fuck he wants then?
Yeah. And I would if I were him. I'd do whatever the fuck I want.
See, there it is, Coach. That's what I was counting on, because obviously the right would then, and I would love to ask somebody on the right that question. If Trump is given presidential immunity by the Supreme Court, how are you going to feel if and when Joe Biden decides? We already know that they're not going to go for it if Joe Biden does it. But the gravity, the immense implications of the Supreme Court. Yes, we know the Supreme Court is a 6-3 advantage for the conservatives. 3 of those appointed by Trump. You have to believe that they're basically going to look at him like Chutkin said, get the fuck out of here. You don't get absolute immunity. Because if they did, you talk about opening up the floodgates. You talk about opening up Pandora's box. That means for the rest of history, of American history, a president can literally now, well, a president will always be president. The president will now be a dictator. The president will be able to do whatever they want, which later on we'll discuss it down the road if he wins the nomination. But I was telling you before the show that if he was to get this would set the stage for Project 2025. And I'm not going to get into Project 2025, but to get into the point that if a president can do whatever he wants, then number one, that means fuck the Constitution, the courts, the laws, the three branches of government, he'll literally be able to do whatever he wants with any branch of government, with any government, anything. That would be hell to pay, buddy.
The only thing that I can say about trying to keep a president under control that's been granted absolute immunity is that we still have impeachment in the Constitution for crimes and high crimes and misdemeanors. The problem, obviously, with impeachment is it's a partisan issue. You're not getting rational, real type people listening and stuff. You have either the Democrats on one side and the Republicans on the other. They vote right down the line between the two of them. And so the idea of impeachment being actually a tool to get rid of a president that is committing crimes, that's not a solid thing anymore. That's not something that you can count on as a device. It really would just simply come down to who's got more people in the offices to say how that would go, Yeah. So that is a problem there. But the other problem, again, like you're saying, and it's a question of, Donald Trump's trying to say he didn't take an oath to the Constitution. I don't know what the fuck he means by that, because when you get sworn into the presidency, you swear to defend the Constitution. So I don't know what he thinks that maybe some kind of wording, semantics, whatever, as far as trying to say that he didn't take an oath. But I think that's still completely irrelevant whether he took an oath or not. The Constitution still exists as the law of the land, and you can't get around that part of it. We manipulate the Constitution. We kind of like disagree on what it implies, and ends up in Supreme Court. And depending on the court, whether it's a liberal court or a conservative court, we have different decisions on the same fucking topic. Guns, for example, is a great example of where the courts have sat in different issues. So, but I think that if the courts did try to do anything, they would have to have impeachment in their decision. With the Supreme Court's ruling and they put out their decision, they'd have to talk about immunity from prosecution for crimes within his office. That's the other thing, that it's always about, president having immunity, but the scope has always been considered within the realms of his position, right? So if he's committing crimes that are within the realm of his office and his position, that's one thing that he has an immunity from, because it's happening inside the scope of his job. The problem is not everything does, and that's the argument with what they're trying to do with the January 6th, is they're trying to suggest that Donald Trump was acting as the president of the United States when he was giving those speeches, and therefore it's free speech and it shouldn't be, infringed upon. The problem is the disagreement whether or not he was as the acting president or was he a candidate? Was he still acting as a candidate for the presidency? And so you do have this kind of thing that has to, be decided as well. And that's kind of part of what will be decided, I think, through the courts anyways, through the actual case.
Didn't we watch Donald Trump swear in, get sworn in as the president of the United States, and swear, pledge his oath to the Constitution? I mean, I was watching it. I could have sworn that's what I saw.
Yeah, I think there's actually video of it. Imagine,
Yeah, I mean, we know how
that doesn't matter to Donald Trump. This is the biggest thing, because what's going to happen. He spreads this. He says that he doesn't have an oath to the Constitution, therefore he can't be held accountable. Completely asinine. But what's sad is that somebody is sitting at their fucking kitchen table right now arguing with their relative about how Donald Trump never swore to the Constitution. Somebody's going to believe this bullshit.
I just went through it, Coach. Literally. I've been through it over and over again. He didn't swear. I'm like, I tell them, read your comment. Do you seriously not understand what a stupid fucking comment you just made? So now, next, Trump counters by asking the Supreme Court to delay their decision. What does this all mean? Now, first and foremost, excuse me, as a former criminal myself, let's see. I've been accused of a crime or crimes. Crime or crimes that I know I'm innocent. and I can prove it. And I've been indicted, and they want to set a trial date. And you're my lawyer, Coach. Here's what I'm telling you, Coach. I want court trial dates yesterday, the day before yesterday. I want them last fucking week. Why? Because we got an open and shut case. I'm innocent. You know I'm innocent. And we have the definitive proof that I'm innocent. So let's get this done so I can prove to the world that I'm innocent and shut. And look, people, hey, maggots, if Trump is innocent and he's got the proof, yesterday I was going through this. He's just been, I said, can I ask you a question? So why is it that we haven't seen the evidence? Why has he been, the woman literally tells me, because he knew this would happen and he was holding on to it till the right time. I'm like, wow, you sound like a fucking moron.
I think the right time is when you're being investigated by a fucking grand jury.
You don't let it get that
before you get indicted, for God's sake.
And in Donald Trump's case, as we've never gone through this before, Coach, in Donald Trump's case, I think it's fair to say that if he has the evidence, which we know he doesn't, but if he has the evidence, irrefutable, and he shows it, and he shuts the world up, hey, maggots, your orange daddy is a lock as the 47th president of the United States. He's in. Do you know how many people on the fence are going to get off that fence and say, you fucking Democrats, this was political all along. And this time, it'll be Trump getting 90 million votes. But it's not going to happen because he doesn't have it. And we keep hearing it and hearing it and hearing it. And how long have we been hearing? It's coming. We're going to show you it's coming, and it never comes. So he counters by asking the Supreme Court to delay their decision. If you're innocent, Coach, why in the hell do you want to delay? Why do you keep wanting to delay? By the way, today, in the defamation case against E. Jean Carroll, judge said, "Niet. We're not going to pour shit. We're moving forward." It's just ridiculous how this guy continues to play this game.
You know, the thing is that's ridiculous is that he's spending millions of dollars on these delays. So it's there's not a financial incentive to delay these cases because you're paying your attorneys, and he has a handful of attorneys, maybe more, maybe two handfuls worth of attorneys or more, that are working these cases, that are reading briefs, they're doing all this work, and they have to keep going back into courts, whether it's Court of Appeals, and start there, and try to get that going so that they can continue to walk it up to the Supreme Court. Problem with Donald Trump, I believe he thinks the Supreme Court's on his side, and I haven't seen any evidence of the fact that they're on his side with regards to this election, because they chose not to deal with the election fraud case. There was nothing there to go on. There was no reason to overturn the election as much as he wanted them to. And they probably could have had they taken on the case. Who knows what the Supreme Court could have done. But they didn't. And as much as right now, the thing is that Jack Smith was kind of like jumping over the last rock to get into the pool, So he went directly to the Supreme Court, circumventing the appeals court. And he went to the Supreme Court to try to get them to expedite a decision on this immunity, knowing full well that no matter what happens in the appeals court, that it's going to end up in the Supreme Court, because one of the two sides is going to file an appeal to the Supreme Court. So if Jack Smith lost that argument and they gave him absolute immunity in the appeals court, then Jack Smith's going to take it to the Supreme Court. If Donald Trump loses and he's not given absolute immunity, then he's going to take it to the Supreme Court. The delay, again, is just one of those staggering scenarios. It's like, listen, if I can push off this case for, another 6-8 weeks, that's 2 months before I have to deal with even appealing it to the Supreme Court. That gives me a number of more months. And if they drag their feet on it, by the time it's decided, it's November. And that's what he's hoping he can do. He can drag out these cases and keep, the appeals going to keep himself from having to face the consequences. Again, an innocent person would not go to this length. It makes absolutely no sense. And Donald Trump, as you say, I mean, they all do it, right? You see fucking Wacko Rudy, too. They all have the evidence. You just wait. I'm going to show you. You just wait. That's the most asinine display of it's like, come on, man. If I had the fucking evidence, I'm putting it on the internet. I'm like posting every fucking PDF.
Everything.
I'll show you my bank records. I'll put it out there for the world to see.
Why are you going to be paying millions of dollars in legal fees when you're innocent? You think I'm going to pay you fucking lawyers? What are you kidding me? Like you said, he's holding it. He's been waiting. No, he has to. First of all, Donald Trump don't give a fuck about anybody's rules. And believe me, it would have been all over Truth Social, people. He's got his own platform. And Rudy's still saying he got evidence. He lost $148 million and he's still talking shit. Now these ladies are suing him again.
And that's because he's still talking shit, right? So $148 million judgment, and his fucking press conference is about the fact that he has evidence that this is true. It's like, Rudy, you're a fucking lawyer, man. You're supposed to make that case in the fucking courtroom, not out and behind a fucking microphone on TV after losing the case. And that's the same concept with Donald Trump. It's like, you run your fucking mouth, you got all this evidence, and yet you never showed up to the grand juries and presented it. Yeah, so of course you're indicted, you ass.
How about that laptop?
They got the laptop.
I'm still waiting, and it's incredible how I tell these people, you're so obsessed with this fucking laptop. Don't give a shit about the laptop. What's on the laptop? Tell me something. Show me something.
From what I've understood, really the only thing that they've come across on the laptop is personal embarrassing moments that he has on the laptop. There's no proof of any kind of relationship with Joe Biden financially benefiting by his son's businesses. So, and that's really what it's going to take. That's the only smoking gun that the Republicans can grab onto for their case, because to make a case that Hunter Biden did something wrong and therefore you're going to impeach the president of the United States for Hunter Biden's actions, it's idiotic, and this is what they've been doing. They've been investigating Hunter in order to get some kind of fishnet created that they can try to throw at Joe Biden. And we learn they have a string with no fucking hook. There's nothing there, And I don't, again, one of those things, we talk about it plenty of times. This is not a I give a shit moment. I really don't. I really don't give a shit. They're going after now. I don't know if you saw that Comey and Jordan teamed up to write a letter to the executive, branch, we'll say, most specifically the White House. But they're requesting copies of communications that went on most recently between Joe Biden and emails with like the business partner, Hunter Biden's business partner. And they're trying to find out whether or not Joe Biden advised his son on how to give that speech in front of Congress.
Oh, yeah, I saw that. You're right.
And not do the deposition, And so now they're investigating whether or not Joe was involved in this decision-making process and stuff like that. It's like, I don't know if he was or not. I really don't know.
And if he was,
I would have given him.
Right. Like you said, I don't give a shit. What's the fucking difference? Stop talking and start showing us. I got a guy I was talking to just before the show. Open borders. Okay, fine. First of all, there is no open borders. But if there is, do me a favor. Show me the executive order that Joe Biden signed. Show me the policy. Speaking of policies, by the way, before we move on to the next subject, I saw a stat, Coach, that Congress usually passes on the average 391 bills a year. and the 118th Congress passed 27.
Yeah. But I think that goes to show you what we've kind of been seeing with the Republican Party, probably going back to 2016 when Donald Trump took over. You know, they had the whole Donald Trump calling the Democrats the do nothing Democrats. But I think the first stunt of their downfall was with the Affordable Health Care Act, when they tried to have that overturned and get rid of it. And they claimed that they had a replacement, and that they're going to break it out in 2 weeks. And he took pictures, all these stacks of papers all around them. This is our new plan. And the reason why it got shot down was because they didn't prove that they had a replacement plan. And that's what McCain's problem was with getting rid of the Obamacare, is that there is nothing to replace it with. And now you have to try to reenact a law that was taken off the books because you got rid of it. How hard was it to get that Affordable Health Care Act to become law to begin with? That was a power stroke that had to happen to get that done. And the Republicans never would have gone along with it anyway. They were fortunate that we had the majority. But when you're talking about 27 bills, you're figuring that's about 2 bills a month.
Yeah.
I mean, how
you literally aren't
even being in office. Their whole time they've spent is because they're spending their time on these investigations. You have 3 different investigations going on right now in the House with regards to Biden. And I think they're spearheading the whole idea of, developing these hearings for establishing documentation and stuff that they can work into some kind of impeachment trial. The whole impeachment inquiry is what it is. It's an inquiry. It has nothing to do with actually being impeached, although most impeachment inquiries lead to impeachment. It's just one of those scenarios, I think, that they want to drag that out because in their MAGA's minds, he's being impeached. This effort is good enough for them to feel like they're moving forward with an impeachment, when really they're just moving forward with a clown show.
And they're going to do anything that their orange daddy tells them to do.
Yeah.
And by the way, speaking of Obamacare, 13 years in running, 13 years of repeal and replace. We're going to replace it. We're going to strike it down. 13 years without a plan. It's the longest 2 fucking weeks that I've waited for anything in my goddamn life, Coach. No lie. All right, Coach. These next several topics, I'm going to put them on the screen, and you're going to take it away. Hit it, Coach. Israel versus the Middle East.
So you got Israel versus the Middle East, right? Israel, first of all, they're not backing down on their fucking cause. No. They, as far as I can tell, they want to level Gaza piece by piece if they have to, going, house by house, room by room, searching for these Hamas people. And they'll destroy every building they come to until there's nothing but rubble. And then from what I understand, that's pretty much what North Gaza is now, is just a pile of fucking rubble. And they're pushing that to get Hamas out. But I think there's a bigger agenda there. I don't think it's all about Hamas. I think it has to do with territory. It has to do with not wanting to share those borders with the Palestinians. And, the problem is that it's now starting to escalate, right? So you have Hamas. They did this. I think it's quite apparent, and maybe it should be apparent. Maybe it's not apparent to everybody, that Iran's the puppet master in this show, okay? Mm-hmm. And you really got to get that through an understanding, okay? Hamas is financed through Iran, okay? Hezbollah is financed by Iran, Hezbollah being in the north of Israel. And then you got this other group out of Yemen, and they're all being financed by Iran. So what's happening now is that they're taking shots at Israel, and in some cases they're taking shots at the United States bases in Israel and around the area, which is causing the United States to have to retaliate. We've sent, I think, into Syria this past week. We bombed some organization because of the attack that wounded one of the soldiers and stuff like that. So you have all that. Israel is a dominant country. Israel can kick everybody's ass if they wanted to. There's no one in the Middle East that can stand up to Israel and the military might that they have. And that's been proven. 1967, the Egypt and a few other, Yemen and Syria, they attacked Israel. And it took 6 days for Israel to defeat all of the Middle East that was involved in this attack. And that was in 67, and we had been supporting them for 20 years. So, of course, we built their military up with what we had for equipment. And that's still true today. Israel works with a lot of the equipment that we supply them. The problem that I have is I'm not for supporting somebody else's war on terrorism. I think that this is an act of terrorism against their country. I don't think it's a war. I don't think it should have been perceived as a war. Palestine is not at war with Israel. Israel is at war with Palestine if they want to use the word war. But I'm not into sending money for that. I really don't think we should be sending money to, or even any kind of help and aid to Israel. And it has nothing to do about anti-Semitism. It's just simply this is their own problem. I mean, Ukraine's a different issue. And so, you kind of got to be able to separate the two issues. Like Israel's dealing with a militant group that's not even in their country. They're not invaded. They were invaded for about fucking 6 to 8 hours, and Hamas ran back across the border, which is why Israel's going after the Gaza Strip, because Hamas went back there. Ukraine has been invaded, has been bullied for numbers of years since Russia went in and took Crimea back and annexed the Crimea. And so it's a different thing. And also, it really, if you look at Europe, Ukraine is like the cork on the bottle. If you pop that cork, you let Ukraine fall, then you're going to have this flowing all over Europe. It doesn't strengthen or weaken NATO, but it puts NATO on a mark where you've just strengthened Russia, and they're going to start chipping away and starting to annex other areas. They might not go full war against Poland, but they might try to annex some territories. I mean, let's face it, that's how Hitler got control over Europe, is he started with little pieces. Right. He asked for this, he asked for that. They granted it to him. He laughed about them and went to war anyways, So I just Israel, I think they can handle their own fight. I mean, this fight is about terrorism. You don't have to go far. It's right there. It's not like United States, who fights wars halfway across the globe. Strategically they can fight it with what they have for a military right now.
And I wonder, Coach. I mean, we know, yes, this mainly, and by the way, thank you for all of you that are watching. Any comments, please feel free to comment. I'll check the comments. I'll put the comments up on the screen. We'll discuss them. But we know, yes, as you said, Ruben has stated very well in the past, that Israel is about, they want all the land. They want it all. They want to run it. You know what I wonder, Coach? I wonder, because it's got a small piece. We know how bad Netanyahu looked when Hamas was able to just literally, easily, I mean, even the Hamas fighters in the video that was shown, they were surprised as to how easy they were able to get into Israel. And we know how bad that has played for the Israelis as far as Netanyahu and his power is concerned, that much talk is going on that it's over. And he knows his reign is over. But that must have pissed him off. And like you said in the beginning, they're playing for keeps. They're willing to have talks for hostages. But I think it's safe to say that Israel is basically ready to say, look, fuck this bullshit. They're ready to flood every tunnel and literally just level the Palestinian land. And make no mistake, it is the Palestinian land. And like you said, Coach, Palestinians didn't go to war. They had no interest in going to war with Israel. But Israel's always been interested in one thing. They want that land. They want Gaza. They want it all.
And therein lies the struggle with that topic, is that this is a religious war, right? This is biblical for them, And when you're talking about that, there was of course in the Torah you have the promised land granted to the Israelites, and that encompassed Jerusalem and the land around there, and they lost the rights to that land through different types of invasions, whether it was the Babylonians or Rome and stuff like that. And the Palestinians have always been there. They were there before the Israelites were given this land. That's back when they were considered the Philistines.
Good point.
So that's been going on, but the territory in the mid 40s after World War II, the territory was controlled by England, and that's when the United Nations got together and created the state of Israel. It was basically a block of land that United Nations, or excuse me, the UK gave to the Israelites for them to have a country of their own, or a state of their own. And it wasn't the size that it is now. And this is the problem that these surrounding countries don't get, is every time they go to war or pick a fight with Israel, they lose territory. Israel has expanded its borders by a significant amount in the last 50 years. And it has everything to do with gaining control over areas that somebody picked a fight with them, and they just went over there and took control. I think, again, Gaza is one of them. I think that, and the thing about Gaza, they could have annihilated Gaza in about a fucking weekend. It's a slow game for them, and the reason why it is a slow game is that it's about national attention. If every couple nights there's a report that a building got bombed, and some civilians got killed, and what it's doing ultimately is it's pushing the rest of the survivors, those that are still living in that area, it's pushing them to become homeless, to move out away from that area, and force them back further into Palestine. And that's the game that Israel's playing, because right now they know they're on the world stage, and they're talking about, we're just taking on the terrorists. So if they just went there and annihilated Gaza, it'd be clear to the world that they were just doing a property grab and using this Hamas attack as a justification for doing this, when it's really this, you're talking about at this point maybe a couple hundred, maybe 1,000 Hamas soldiers in Gaza at best, and now you have hundreds of thousands of people that are displaced because of this. There's no equity in what's going on. You have like 1,600 people affected that were Israelites, and you have over 20,000 people that are killed when you're looking at the Palestinian side. So it's easy to kind of pick a side. I know people that pick the side of the Palestinians. I know people that pick the side of the Israelites, and that's fine. And I think both arguments have their validity. But at the end of the day, it really is an issue they have to work out amongst themselves. I think everybody else should stay the fuck out of it.
Exactly. And last on this, I say this. So you hear the talk, and Biden is helping to support genocide, and he's supplying all this, and he's giving all this money. Hey, listen real carefully, people. Coach just said it. The United States has been supporting Israel for decades, for a long time. It wouldn't matter who the fucking president was right now. This is what we do. And by the way, remember, the U.S. somehow gets involved in so many wars that they don't even have to fight in. It's just the way of the United States. Coach, you asked a real great question, or brought up a good point. So let's measure the Republican opposition to Ukraine's aid.
That it's a leveraging technique for them, right? So the question is, why are they giving such a barrier up about Ukraine aid? I think the first reason why is that because the Democrats are the ones that are pushing hard for, the aid to Ukraine, because it's a democracy, and we don't want to see that democracy fail. and get, end up underneath the Russian control. So the Democrats kind of get it. The Republicans don't give a shit. And I think that's the first thing, is they don't really give a shit. They're kind of pro-Russian right now anyways. The Republican Party in general are pro-Russian. I think they see maybe some way of personal wealth coming out of this. Like Donald Trump has, been making money off of Russia for years, but again, they're using it for leverage. They're using it for the border issue. Like, they're trying to leverage money for Ukraine as money for the border. The border that's a dog whistle. It's always been a dog whistle. The border is not the problem. The problem is the reporting about the border, right? The border doesn't get worse and better, and it flows back and forth. Sometimes, they're catching 10,000 people a day, and sometimes it's, 6,500 a day. That's never been any different under any other president. It's not like the Republican presidents that promised control of the borders have done anything to control the fucking borders. Even Donald Trump was supposed to have Mexico pay for the fucking wall. Well, I don't think Mexico paid, because the wall ain't there. So we didn't get Mexico to pay for the wall. But now you're seeing pictures, and I don't know, if you saw them or not, but this whole caravan of migrants coming through Mexico. And now we're about to have talks with the Mexican president about shoring up the borders. The first thing is that you got to stop that flow. I mean, if Mexico can't do something about their southern border, then those individuals from South America will continue to flow into their southern border and work their way up. There's nothing stopping them. What are you going to do? So there's a first problem. And again, that problem falls on Mexico during the time that all those people are traveling through their country. They're eating up resources, they're, whatever it might be. The problem with the issue is that no matter what's spent, no matter what's done, no matter what's improved with border control, it is what the Republicans have to argue about. It's their only one real argument. If you think about it, they've already won the issue of abortion. So there's no longer really an abortion, argument the way that there was back in the day, where people could say, I'm pro-life, I'm pro-choice, and, they're fighting over that. Right now, pro-life won out, and then becomes, basically the law of the states and no longer the law of the land. But to me, it is a dog whistle. I don't really think that either side is trying to do a good job with the border. I think they just kind of, address the needs. If there's a fence that needs to be repaired, fine. If there's, they need to put somebody stationed at a certain post so that they're, finding an easy pathway. The problem is they're fighting over stupid shit, right? The federal government is like fighting Texas for everything Texas is trying to do, to stop. Now, the problem is what Texas is trying to do is all gimmicks, right? Putting buoys in the river to make it difficult for crossing, stuff like that. That's fine. But you know what? That fucking buoy system isn't going to go the length of the river. It's just a gimmick aspect, but it might have been helpful. It might have maybe placed in the right place where people can cross the river the easiest, put an obstruction there so you don't make it as easy to get in. Because the problem isn't migration or immigration. The problem is illegal entry. That's the problem, is that if we don't control the illegal entry aspect of this, we will be inundated with migrants and immigrants that we simply can't provide resources for, that fall onto a problem that's bigger than what it is right now. So we definitely have to control the border. But I think we have to all take it more seriously, and that includes the Republicans. I think they campaign on it, but they don't do a fucking thing about it.
And that's the way it's been for decades. And that's what I've always said when it comes to talk about the border. It doesn't matter which administration has been in power in the United States, Democrat, Republican, it's the same shit. Congress does nothing about the fucking border. There's been no immigration bills, no laws, nothing but decades past. And you brought up something really good, Coach, that you really don't hear much. And as much as I'm on social media and scouring all over the place, people don't talk about this much, what you just said about Mexico's southern border. Because in order for these migrants to get here, they must cross through Mexico. They've got to come from whatever countries they're coming from, south of Mexico, be it this way, this way, this way, that way. Doesn't they've got to go through Mexico, and I'm really going to do some homework on that, Coach, because I really want to look further into that as far as Mexico's southern border. What is Mexico's policies? What is Mexico doing? What's happening at Mexico's southern border? Because they're getting through. And like you said also, it's the illegal, which all of us should be against any illegal border crossing at any point. And for those of you out there that continue to make the absolute, and it's happening now as I talk to you, these fucking idiots that the border's open. If the border was open, why do we need Border Patrol agents? We don't need Border Patrol agents if the border was open. If the border was open, why do we have ports that people, if the border was open, why are there thousands of migrants on the Mexican side waiting to come in legally? What the fuck? They wouldn't have to do it if the borders were open. But it's been the same shit all along. Same shit all along. Nobody does anything about it. One party wants to blame the other, and that's correct. And when you talked about Ukraine, another good point you made, you start wondering, is there money involved in here somewhere? Because anybody with a fucking brain knows that no aid to Ukraine equals a win for Vladimir Putin. Simple as 1, 2, 3. So when you don't want to give aid to Ukraine, you are clearly stating that you support Vladimir Putin and Russia. I get kickback on that. Oh, what the fuck are you talking about? I don't support Russia. Well, fuck that aid. You just answered your own fucking question.
And that just goes to the ignorance of the average American person. You know, they look at it without an understanding that this isn't just money being spent and thrown down the drain. These are investment funds. We're investing in security. You know, you allow Russia to continue to push, they will continue. And they will begin to get involved in other disputes, and they will back, like Iran. Look, just use Iran as an example. Right now, Iran is funding all of this bullshit going on against Israel. Russia does the same thing. China does the same thing. You know, they back other countries to become a fucking pain in the ass. Why do you think fucking North Korea exists? North Korea exists because of China, not because of North Korea, you know. It is just one of those things that, again, if you leave it to the hands of Russia, they will push and push and push. And you get Belarus right there. Another, you know, they're fans of Putin. So now you have this whole steel front. Now you have the Iron Curtain again, you know?
Yeah, and like you said earlier, give Putin an inch, and he's going to take 10,000 miles. And any chance you give him to push forward and push forward and push forward, he's going to continue to take land. He's going to go to the next country, until yeah.
And I'll tell you this, right? This could escalate. This war with Ukraine could escalate if Putin has his way. And certainly, I think that Putin will escalate things if Donald Trump becomes the president of the United States. Because Putin in Russia, they're talking about strategic nuclear weapons. All right, these aren't the nuclear weapons that you drop on Hiroshima or even some of the bigger nuclear bombs that exist that we have for intercontinental missiles and stuff like that. These are warheads that can go on your average missile, and they're, you know, they're a firecracker compared to, say, an atomic bomb that took out Hiroshima. But they'll take out city blocks. They'll kill thousands of people in one drop. And they're nuclear weapons, which means there's a radiation factor that's going to contaminate the air, the land, the water, everything for thousands, hundreds, millions of years, you know. So there is an issue. But if he's going to fucking go that far, he's going to do it in Ukraine first. He's going to drop those bombs in Ukraine.
Yep.
And I don't think that he'll do it while Biden is president of the United States, because I think he understands that there's a retaliatorial aspect to using nuclear weapons, even though we don't have a contract for Ukraine and NATO, where under demand we would have to help them. This would become a retaliatory aspect. America would get involved in. Russia does not want America getting any further involved than we are already.
They don't. By the way, speaking of your boy, Kim Jong-un, he just ordered his military to start making preparations for war.
Well, he's another one.
Yeah. Now, not mind you, I don't think that any country is going to really have to worry about North Korea's military might, but you're dealing with a fucking nut.
North Korea has no military might. Here's the first thing. If he's just now, today, telling his military to get ready for war, what the fuck have they been getting ready for the last 50 fucking years? Okay? Because they've been a war machine since the Korean War. They haven't stopped. They're a closed society that's a militarily established society that protects its dictatorship. So these guys have been training for war all the time. North Korea is another one that talks about these strategic nuclear bombs, that they want to have their hands on those. And, again, that escalates it. What are they going to do with it? These become bombs that you can use in locales and smaller, areas that you can kind of use a precision attack and get the most for your bang, But I don't think I don't think they have the power to go any further than being a mouthpiece, because China's not going to want that. China can't have North Korea become any more of a fucking nightmare than what they are for the United States and that region, because they have to do business with us and they have to keep some level of diplomacy. And they're fighting over Taiwan. China would rather fight over fucking Taiwan than worry about North Korea.
Absolutely.
And so that's their issue there. They don't want to escalate anything with the United States more than what they already have. And North Korea, I think, can be easily put in check by China and keeping him from making a mistake like setting off a nuclear weapon against South Korea, for example.
Isn't it something how the human mind works, Coach? I'm a dictator. I run this entire country. All the money is mine. Everything in this country is mine. I can take it anytime I want, but I'm not satisfied. I want to take more land, more country, kill more people. It's fucking nuts how it works.
If you sit on top of your fortune and you just live this privileged life, you mean nothing to the people. You see, just like Donald Trump does his rallies and says his ridiculous speeches and all, it's to keep the people behind you. If you put your feet up and you just, dictate from a glass tower, you're going to lose the supporters. They're going to lose respect for you. They're not going to feel connected with you. And so what Kim Jong-un does is he continues the message that his uncle and his father and all his predecessors have been driving. They've always said the same thing, and they're the ones that are basically the mouthpiece of the area. They run their fucking mouth. They make all kinds of threats. They do stupid things like shoot off missiles after America was having some kind of training exercise and stuff like that. So they're just what is that? That's like shooting off again like a firecracker and saying that it meant something to the greater military might in the world. There's no question that North Korea means shit to us militarily, but in the same regard, we're not into going into North Korea and demolishing that, because that raises the problem with us against China.
Absolutely. And the U.S. economy in 2023, Coach, of course, there was COVID. And when the pandemic started to ease up in 2020 and go into 2021, as Donald Trump's presidency came to an end and Joe Biden's began, we saw, of course, the backup barges backed up by the dozens, full of supplies that couldn't get to where they had to go, causing, of course, the effect of supply and demand, which did not just affect us here in America, but happened to affect the world globally. And once that happened, of course, inflation kicked in. Yes, for the righties, I'm going to say, yes, some presidential policies play a role in inflation. And normally they would play a key role. But this wasn't normal. We faced the pandemic unlike any pandemic we'd ever faced in probably maybe in recent human history. And shit went awry. So prices went up. Again, demand was up, supply was down, everybody was screwed. But little by little, the economy has been rebounding. Gas prices. I myself I again drive a Cadillac, a luxury Cadillac. I can take regular gasoline, I can take silver mid-grade, but I don't do that. I would never put any of those in my Cadillac. I put premium gasoline in my Cadillac, and I paid $5.19 a gallon. Did I like that? Fuck no. Who the hell wants to pay $5.19 a gallon for gasoline? It cost me $125 to fill my fucking tank. I just filled it up the other day for $2.76 for premium gasoline. Do I like paying $2.76? Why, hell no, I don't. But I sure like it a whole lot better than $5.19. 2 packs of eggs. And in my house, we use eggs. 2 packs of eggs. I've watched that shit go from $3 to $7 to $9 to $11 to almost $13 for 2 fucking 18 packs of eggs. And I was buying them. Well, shit, I got no chickens. I gotta buy the fucking eggs. I'm now paying $3.26 for that same pack. Still up from what it was, but down low. People, price gouging by companies is real. Whoever doesn't know that, then you're just party over country and you're just looking for a reason to blame the administration and Joe Biden. How do I know? Number one, you got to be fucking stupid not to see it. Number two, my wife and I, we buy Sara Lee bread, Sara Lee honey wheat bread. At Kroger's, the Kroger supermarket, that loaf of bread costs $4.49. At my wife's job, Walmart, that same loaf costs $2.83. Now, how the fuck does a loaf of bread cost $1.40, $1.50 more half a mile down the road? Because the fucking company selling it is charging the fucking price. That's why. There's no standard price. But little by little, Coach, the economy is recovering. Stock market setting records, GDP, low unemployment, job creation. And by the way, people, it's how do you don't do your fucking homework? The job creation is not COVID jobs lost coming back, okay? You gotta understand how fucking stupid you sound when you say that. And as I turn it to you, Coach, I tell you what I tell them. If this were Donald Trump, had he won, and we went through the same exact thing that we've gone through in the Joe Biden presidency, I bet you'd be touting them numbers right now that you see. Coach, the U.S. economy in 2023.
I think that you started with the right point of the supply and demand that this led to. The COVID didn't change the demand so much for goods. It shifted the demand of what goods were needed. People started to be staying home longer. They weren't going into the office, so their needs changed, and the things they purchased changed. The stimulus check allowed people to do work around their house and do projects, and a lot of reason why the cost of lumber went up was because supply went down because people were thinking, well, with the closing down of these states and the economies in these states, the demand is going to go down. Therefore, we can slow down on production, if you will. And they did. They slowed down on production. Right. And many companies did that. And what happened within the United States, when you slow down production, you release workers. You get rid of those workers. They become displaced or laid off. And that's what went on during the pandemic. Companies kind of cut to the bare bones of what they needed to do. So when all of a sudden things were opening and supply was there, you didn't have the infrastructure anymore to deliver those supplies. You didn't have the truckers working ready to go at the docks. We didn't have all that stuff. You had containers that have been stacking up for quite a long time that weren't being moved because the demand wasn't there at the time. You bring up the bread. The interesting about that point between Walmart and Kroger's is quite simply volume. And this is, again, a supply and demand issue. Walmart can buy, hundreds of millions of loaves of bread and get a better price than Kroger can from Sara Lee, and that's kind of what happens with the power of money when it comes to grocery stores, especially national chains like that. They can invest in a volume that no one else can get a price per unit comparable for that. And so you have a smaller organization like Kroger's that basically has to manipulate their prices to, meet their economic goals, if you will. Price gouging goes on. The U.S. economy, you pointed out all the important things as far as the GDP, the stock market, S&P 500, the job creation, the low unemployment. But the thing that you have to compare it with when you're looking at inflation. Now, inflation was as high as 9% at one point globally. And we had the Inflation Act passed with the infrastructure bill and stuff like that here in America. And that's the kind of policy that a president can put forward that can help inflation and price gouging. And so what has happened over the last year and a half or so is that we as a country, our inflation rate inside of America has gone down. We're down around 3% from as high as 9%. That's not the best number, 3%. I think they want it to be about 2%. But what it's offsetting and what's being overlooked is the fact that right now we're at the highest wage increase for individuals in this country. So you have a lot of people that, for example, when they were being called back to work, decided not to go back to that job and maybe moved up the ladder in another company somewhere and got a better job, a better pay. That was going on. A lot of companies had a hard time hiring people back, so they had to raise their salary and their wages that they pay. So as much as inflation is a topic and prices are a problem, they're really being, kind of like you're only looking at half of the glass there. The other half is how much wages have gone up across America. And that's not to say everybody's wages have gone up, but there is a balance there of probably the biggest wage increase in history has gone on in the last 2 years.
And it's going to be very important, Coach, before we get to final thoughts here. It's going to be very important that the Democrats understand that they get the messaging correct. Learn from the mistakes that happened when Hillary Clinton didn't win. There are very few people who thought, careful and listen to what I'm saying, people, not who you wanted to win, who you thought was going to win in 2016. It was Hillary Clinton. It was the most prepared presidential candidate in American history. It was her turn. It was her time, and she was going to win. But she and her people and the party took battleground states and so much more pretty much for granted. Hillary didn't go to places she should have gone because she assumed she was going to win. Learn from that. Learn the messaging now. You have to find a way to secure the nomination and then win the election in 2024. Speak of the economy. Speak hard of what it's done. talk about where it was and where it is now and where it's going. I believe it's who is it, Gas Buddy or whoever it is that's predicting that gas prices are going to go down even more in 2024. Hell, my car heard that and honked at me from the garage. I mean, yeah, all that is very important. Got a lot of work to do, Coach. We got this show. I'm going to cut this intro a little bit, and damn, just a little over an hour, Coach. Not bad.
We made it.
Not too bad, huh? At this point, Coach, is what I ask you. Final thoughts, Coach.
My final thoughts has to do with the election, and Joe Biden's performance is what's going to matter here. As much as the messaging, and you're absolutely correct, that Democrats need to understand how to message better. It's Biden on the stage with Donald Trump, and how he handles that without stumbling, and because I see some clips, where he stumbles and it's embarrassing. And I'm like, obviously there's clips of Donald Trump stumbling as well, but Joe Biden, he just looks older and more frail than Donald Trump. So when he stumbles, it's age-related stumbling, and when Donald Trump stumbles, it's forgivable. So his presentation is really going to matter, and I think that's really what could save his run for the presidency, is handling himself very well in the debates against Donald Trump and showing people that he's not too old for the job.
And I'm going to piggyback off of that a little bit. My final thoughts go along to Donald Trump's side of this election coming up. He's got these cases against him, these trials that have come up. Which trial is going to get off and happen before the election? I think we can agree that there's nothing that should really slow or stop the Georgia state case against Trump, one that he cannot control. Jack Smith has worked very hard, obviously, as they say, dotting his I's and crossing his T's. People have asked, what's the delay? Come on, Jack. People, it takes time to put cases like this together, especially something this big. A report came out today, I believe, about recordings and emails show how Trump team flew fake elector ballots to D.C. in the final push to overturn the 2020 election. So it turns out that 2 days before January 6th, the Trump campaign, their plan to use the fake electors hit a roadblock. They found out that fake elector certificates from 2 of the battleground states were basically stuck in the mail. So what they did was they got, and these are recordings and confession / testimony / help from Kenneth Cheesebro, who's verifying all of this, because part of his plea deal is that he must cooperate in these cases against Trump and others. So what they did was to fly copies of phony certificates from Michigan and Wisconsin to Washington, D.C. Of course, it turned out that Mike Pence wasn't having any of it in the end, so it didn't matter. But one of the most perplexing questions that I've asked myself in my lifetime is, what will it take for the cult to come out of their trance? Is there anything that could be found that would bring them out of their trance? Because people, we all know, not we all know, let me correct that. I think it is safe to assume, Donald Trump's not going to get away with 91 straight felonies. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. He's going to get convicted of several, if not a couple of dozen felonies. But remember that in the United States, a felon cannot vote. but a felon can run for president of the United States. That's how fucked up this country is, by the way, because that makes absolutely no fucking sense. So how do you stop Donald Trump? You're not going to, the only way you're going to stop him, one, he has to die. And I don't think that Donald Trump looks like he's going to kick the bucket anytime soon. Something's got to give. Testimony must come out. Evidence irrefutable to the point that even the cult says, holy shit. Wakes up out of their trance, and all of a sudden we see a seismic shift away from Trump onto Nikki Haley or whoever's left over. We don't know. But the situation it's critical. So, and we've got to find a way, because people at this point, it doesn't matter to me if Joe Biden is president or not. It doesn't matter to me if Kamala Harris is president or not. It doesn't matter if Chris Christie is president. It doesn't matter to me if Nikki Haley becomes president. It don't matter to me if those two fucking nuts named Vivek Ramaswamy or fucking Ron DeSantis become president. What we cannot have is another Donald Trump presidency. Because for those of you that bow down to him and kiss his ass, you know what's going to happen? You're going to bend down and kiss his ass one more time when he wins the presidency, and you're going to start tasting that shit that's going to come out straight on your face, because he's going to shit all over us, all of us. If you're not the powerful, if you're not the elite, you're fucked. And you're going to find out how much Donald Trump doesn't give a damn about you. Thank you for joining us, folks, this evening. This is, of course, Attack on the Politicos. It is the NGSC Sports weekly political show. I'm your host, Rob Garcia, of course, joined by the coach. Lori will be back with us next week. Please remember the website, as always, at NGSCSports.com for all of your current content. And, of course, as we leave, how could we not leave without this?
There is such a thing as security that's needed anyway. So I think for the way we can work through this.
Trade can be wonderful if you have smart people, but we have people that are stupid.
This is your victory. I know you didn't do this just to win an election. I know you didn't do it for me. You did it because you understand the enormity of the task that lies ahead.
Coach, an old familiar face, is saying hello. Hi, Heather. Hey, Heather, that picture right there? Damn. Oh, I can't say that. I'm on camera. Figure it out, Heather. I love you, Heather. Happy New Year. Good to hear from you, folks. Thanks for joining us from NGSC Sports, from all of us here at Attack on the Politicos. We do wish all of you a very happy 2024. Many of you, of course, will have your New Year's resolutions. Some of you will be really full of shit about it. Some of you will be actually committed to it. So much that goes on, so much you want to fix. But try to remember, for all the problems that we have, there are real problems that go on around the world. There's hunger, there's starvation. Look at Ukraine. Look at Gaza. There are innocent people paying the price for governments who are just hungry for power. Heather says, and a happy New Year to you too. Happy New Year to you too, mi amiga. Thank you for joining us. Coach and I and Lori, well, we don't know if we're ever going to be back next week or the week after, but we'll be back soon, folks. Thanks for joining us. Peace out.